This is fishing. I've come down an hour and a half past Geelong on the coast. Going to be fishing straight top water. It's currently about 6:35 in the morning. Just got to keep watching out for the waves. Around this area can be gnarly. I've fished here many of times. Just got to be very careful. I wish could get out to that rock over there. But just with the waves and everything on the highest point of the tide, it's a bit hard. Fishing extra tight drag. So I do know there is a lot of reef down here, and I really do not want to lose this lure. What I'm using now is a diving popper. Now I have fished this location before. Last time I came here I was just using chieftains in the 180. Doing the same technique, except I'm using a diving popper. and I managed to hook up to a buck 20 kingfish around this time of the year as well, so that's why I'm coming back to my first spot while I try to hunt kingfish again. As the tide does drop, I will be moving to a different spot. So the diving pop I'm using is a 60 gram from the boys at Taco Tackle, their West range. In the, I believe it's a BlackJack colour. So I'm going to start off with the diving popper, and then as the sun rises a bit more, I'll be swapping off to a Malosi Vader. It's not every day you get the chance to travel to these sorts of locations. But woke up before the sun, managed to beat the sun here, managed to have some breakfast, and now I've just got a couple of hours of straight fishing. I have a 128 gigabyte SD card that I'm going to completely fill up. Well, welcome to chasing the king. I've just had a quick scan. It's a bit calmer over there without the waves, and the current is pushing that direction. So I am going to have a quick look over there, see if I can get over there and cast out, because that might be better to work than working it into the waves, especially I know that there's shallow reef up close. As I did talk about in the fishing off Patterson Lakes or Patterson River, very important to make sure you're extra careful on rocks, especially this form of fishing. Yeah, this looks a lot calmer to work, and as the tide goes down I can push out a bit more. On the rocks, barnacles and oysters are your best friend. Might move back a bit while I watch this wave, see what it does. Alright, so the waves will at least get up to here. Because I know what type of fish are in this area of water, I am fishing very tight drag. The last thing I want is to hook up after waiting so long. After waiting so long for a chance to go hunt the mighty kingfish, I do not want to lose it. Our water is very cold. I was trying to be very careful when I bring this lure in when it gets close to the rocks. So I can't really go out there because the constant water flow could make me slip. I couldn't end up in the drink and seriously injure myself. As you can see, I just had a bit of a tip rat. I know this, there we go, so it was on the rocks. If it is on the rocks, just be extra careful. Because the current's still strongly working and it's still doing its thing with the big waves, I'm going to let it take a quick break. So the last thing I want is to end up in the water. There is one thing I just can't believe. Every time I come back here, it just takes me away with the view. I used to come here as a kid every year. There's a little estuary system down there. Used to just chuck a bait out with a pilchard. The amount of bream and eels that I was catching, it's pretty much what started my fishing journey. So every time I do come back to this spot, it's always just so surreal. Even remember as a kid, just where I was fishing over there, there's a massive rock pool and you could always used to be able to jump in. I don't know if that's still the case now, but that's probably going back like 15, 16 years ago. It's just an amazing place. No boats, no fishing pressure. It's just you and the water. I am going to change over lure, mainly for the fact of, because it's so choppy, I want to get further casting distance to get into that current section. Heavier lure, cast further. So what I want to do is I want to take this diving popper off. Then I'm going to chuck on a the Malosi Vader. I will go back to the diving popper, but at the moment I want that extra distance. And the Vader should provide it being a lot more grams. Malosi Vader 220F Rapture. I might have got the highest point of the tide incorrect. Now it's looking like now is the high tide. It's currently 15 past 7 in the morning. Cast like a missile. Not a fan of this wave coming in. Because the tide has picked up a bit, I must have read the tide times wrong. I'm just relaxing for a bit because it's a bit too hectic off the rocks. You keep getting waves, they go halfway up your legs. The last thing I want is to end up in the drink and lose my whole rod and everything. So I'm just going to relax for a bit. Hopefully the tide starts dropping soon. I can get stuck back into fishing, but you can definitely tell that it's risen because this section over here is filled up with water. That section over there is filled up with water. The waves are coming in closer. But what a time, what a day, what a weekend. You don't get days like this often. You don't get to go to places like this all the time. But I will be doing this hopefully at least once a month. I'm traveling out, going rock fishing, fishing off some insane rocks, facing some insane current. I've been wanting to do this idea for a long time, ever since I started getting a GoPro, started getting into fishing more often, started fishing top water, started fishing heavy. You know, it's just a waiting game of the water. So I would go back up to that section as well, but even when I was sitting here off camera, you could see the waves when they come in real close. They'll smack the rock and they'll splash up. And that's the last thing. I don't really want to get completely drenched. Now it looks like I don't have that much long left of casting the Rapture. It's a banging colour for in the sun. I've got the feeling I won't do that good when this comes over. This is looking very black compared to very bright. The Vader, man, it's such an insane lure. First time using it. I've been casting it for probably over an hour now. A bit tricky to work, but when you get the hang of it, when you get the sweeps correct, it's one of the best lures I've ever used at the moment. The fact that you can pop it, it's a rear sinking sick bait, so it sits like this in the water. You can sweep it hard and it'll go down, do an S motion, pop back up. There's so many different ways you can work this Vader. The boys at Malosi have done an insane job on it. You can see why it has won an award. It's definitely worth the money. And it's even a benefit to just cast like a missile. But we'll try to cast this Vader as long as we can before all that comes over. And we'll go back to the diving popper. Oh, we had a hit. So far, after about 2.5 hours of fishing, we've had one hit. Didn't manage to hook up, but it is a good sign. The fact that we did have one hit does mean that there is something out there that does want this size. What I'm going to do now is, the waves are starting to pick up a bit now again, so I'm going to take another 5-minute break. Probably honestly swap over to that diving popper. Even though it is still sunny over there where I'm casting, I'm probably only going to get 10-15 minutes of the Vader more, so I might as well just swap over to it now. We'll have to say I was a bit iffy on this Vader. The fact of how big it is, the hooks on it, and only being in Victoria, the kingfish don't get that big, and it is a one-in-a-lifetime chance to hook a massive kingfish. But the fact that something hit this, I'm going to say that it might have been a kingfish, means that the big kingfish are back for another year. I'll be definitely casting the Vader off more locations. The Vader, it's a 220 stick bait. It weighs 115 grams without the terminal, so just as a timber lure. This is a 6.0 GT Rex BKK and 11.0 BKK Diablo with size 10 decoys on it. Make sure you have really good split ring pliers. These are good, but not the best for size 10 decoys. It's alright to put a swivel on and off, but to try and open it up a lot just to put the hooks on, I did have a bit of trouble with it. So just keep that in mind. But I think this lure sets back just over $100 or so, but it is definitely worth it. Designed for big fish. Definitely worth it. The fact of as well, it's a rear sinking sick bait. So when it sits in the water, it sits vertically, and then you sweep, and it'll dive down, and then it'll pop back up. And then when you pop it, so the popping technique is just a quick flick, flick, wind and flick, wind and flick, and you can see just kind of diving a tiny bit, making splashes, making a bubble trail. But because when I was doing it with the bubble trail, that is when I had the good hit. So I'm going to be going back over to this diving pop-up. But he's seen some rocks. That'd be off over there, because I do know out that section is very rocky. The good thing about casting out there is there's no rocks. If it hits a rock, it's on me because it's up close. There is a big difference in grams. 115 for the Malosi Vader. This is just a 60 gram. Now, I have run my fingers over that leader. I've noticed a fair bit of chafing. So I'm just going to quickly retie. So that way, if we do hook up, I know I'm not going to lose a fish. So with heavy setups, my go-to knot is the FG knot. It's a bit of a tricky knot, but it's easiest on the guides. It's the strongest knot you probably could do. And I'd rather spend 5 minutes tying a knot that I know is going to stay strong and not come loose if I do hook up to a massive fish. 180 pound shock leader by Verifast. Everyone does their FG knot a bit different. Some people follow the massive people. Some people count out the wraps. I honestly don't know how many wraps I've already done. I just googled it and I followed a tutorial, and I've never had an issue with the FG knot ever since I've been just following it. I'll put a link in the description. It is important when you do the FG knot to make sure you do singe down every little bit that you have done for it to have its full effect and strength. as I've just been doing this as well. Starting to get a bit darker, so that diving popper should do the right job. Now this next part with the FG, make sure you do have gloves, especially if you're using very heavy line. It helps protect your hands. And braid cutting does not feel like the nicest thing ever. One thing I like doing when it comes to tightening up the FG, use your knees. You know you've done a right FG when the braid starts changing colour, it's singeing down to the leader. Much better. So you can see the braid has changed a different colour compared to this, where it's a bit fluorescent-y with the leader, because it's singed down towards it. A lighter for this, I use a lighter and scissors. The lighter is for the leader and the scissors are for the braid to cut the tags off. So we'll start with the braid first. Easiest thing to do. Wet up your fingers. Grab a lighter. Try and get out of the wind a bit. You want to make it into a bulb at the end, so that way there is less chance, if you're not does slip a tiny bit, you won't slip off your whole leader completely. Grab your gloves again, so even though you have tightened it down, wet it all up again. You don't need to go full strength, but a bit. So as you can see there, it is not slipping at all. Now it's just getting the right length of leader. What I like to do, I like bringing it in the knot. Up to the top eyelet. Grab my leader, full stretch it out, measure it to the end of the rod, pull off a bit extra. Now this next one's for preference, I still like to keep the lighter out, so we'll use it again. With 180 pound, I just use a Thuni. Punch it down. Snip a bit of the tag off. Make sure we know what that is. Once again, grab your lighter. just helps it. If this knot does slip a tiny bit, that will stop it. I have noticed the tide has dropped a fair bit and the water's turned a bit milky, so it's a good thing I did chuck on this diving popper. Because that floating stick, even though the motion in it is insane, it wouldn't have done the same attraction as this diving popper. For a 60 gram lure, the boys at Taco Tackle really did design this one very well. You can still cast at a good long distance. It looks like it's really sinking when it sits on the surface. And for $60 as well, I think it was, you really can't complain. Oh, got another hit. Come on. So far 2 hits, 1 each lure. Nothing wanting to set hook yet. because I've been fishing for about an hour, I'm gonna go change GoPro battery again. Hopefully in this last hour, we've had one hit on the diving popper, one hit on the Vader. So hopefully in this last hour, we get another hit and we can manage to hook. So I'm not sure what the go is. I'm not sure why they're not staying on hooks. They might just be hitting the lure and just darting off. Kingfish are a very tricky fish. They're very smart. They're even dirty fighters. They'll take you into reef. They'll do everything. For those of you wondering, I just have these 2 extra batteries. They're tungsten. They're for the GoPro Hero 8, 7, 6 and 5. I think it was like 40 bucks. Comes with the case. Came with 2 batteries. Came with a charger for the batteries. Can't complain. Yeah, I'm honestly not sure what I want to do because there's no massive cloud cover. The water's a tiny bit milky. There's a good current line going out there actually. Yeah, the water's a tiny bit milky. I'm not sure if I want to keep this popper on or swap back to the Vader. Honestly might go back to the Vader. Even though this popper is amazing. It's my first diving popper, but I have used poppers before, and it's not hurting my back. It's easy to work. You really can't complain with it. But for the fact that the sun has come up so far up, and it is bright, current's still working strong, I'm gonna go back to the Vader. So I hope that the Vader, because it's got stronger hooks, it's got bigger hooks, it's got a bigger profile, that it will attract the bigger fish compared to the popper. Even though that is kingfish candy size. But the Vader, man, I just want to keep working the Vader. Not sure how much longer we'll have left. The tide's got down a bit and there's a lot of exposed rock that's coming up now. Honestly, probably just give it about 5 casts. Tide's going real low now. Getting a bit hard to bring it back. Over there's way too weighty to cast out. Not really another area to. So we'll just give it 5 more casts. One. 2. 4, 5.